You mentioned the word culture, and you've mentioned that in our talks before. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about your healthy company culture that you've created.
Yeah, and it's a process. It's never done, like just like running a business, it's never done. You're always looking to improve or grow. It's a journey. It's not, we didn't always have the best culture. I think generally speaking, compared to a lot of companies, we have always been on the higher end. We have not had turnover. I generally treat all my staff very well. Our directors do, we have a good team dynamic. I think you could ask anybody here if I generally care about them and their place in this company, and the answer would be yes, right? So to me, I think looking at your team as a team and not, oh, those are my employees that I boss around and, I just, show up, do your job, get your paycheck, don't bother me. Like that is not good. People aren't going to stay. And so to me, whether it's continuing education, trying to pay them as much as you feel like is feasible for your budget within the company, and, promoting people when you can, making sure you're not going to your teammates only when something's going wrong and saying, hey, don't do this. Like, give them props, just like dog training, right? Like, give some positive reinforcement in there. Like, don't always just wait until something's not working well for you to sit down and talk to that person. They need to hear that they're doing well more times than they're not, right? Like, So to me, it's just, there's this term like manage by walking around.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Lianne Shinton from Automation Dogs. Welcome to my podcast. And today we're interviewing again Rebecca Golian from Love in the Lead. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me on again. I'm so excited to talk to you again.
And you are just such an inspiration. And I love what you've done with your business. I know that you are always booked out, like quite a few months, and just doing some amazing things, learning about your story and the work you have done in the guide dog world. Just like, wow, amazing. And I guess today I would love to pick your brain about your leadership, your team, and your hiring and training, and just some of your principles and core values that you have for your team, your retreats, some of those amazing things that may help other dog trainers that have big goals like you to get some great ideas. But maybe first, if you could share, tell us a little bit about yourself and Love in the Lead.
Yeah. So I know I kind of shared my story a little bit on the last podcast, but I've been training dogs pretty much my whole life, and started off in the rescue world, did a little bit with like Shinton, which is now IGDP. So I had some sport background, been training pet dogs forever. And then I got into service dogs and guide dog training after college. And so that led me out to the West Coast. I trained a lot out there and got licensed, and then moved back to Charlotte in 2019, at the end of 2019. To start Love in the Lead. So prior to dogs, I actually competed horses professionally too. So I've just been working with animals my whole life. And horses are a very hard business to do. So I wanted to work more with dogs. I thought that would allow just a little bit more work-life balance. And it was a way to actually have a career. So I chose dogs, and here we are. So I actually started the business in October of 2019. And it was just myself in a small house outside of Charlotte. And I had a couple clients just through the service dog world. I was contracting some guide dog training, and just started to document my work on socials, Facebook and Instagram, put a nice website together, just kind of basic business 101, set up a business account. We were an LLC, made sure I got hired a good CPA to help with bookkeeping and, some other key items for the areas that I don't have no expertise in. So just setting all that up at the end of 2019, and the growth was so fast. So in January of 2020, I hired my first trainer. And by the middle of that year, we had 6 or 7 on staff. We had dog care. We were just growing exponentially. And by 2021, we ended up with a second facility. So I had to add on. We outgrew the place where we were. We had a home on like about 4 acres, and we had a special use permit to do the business there. And then we had a secondary kind of training center about 10 minutes down the road. So we were actually operating out of 2 facilities, for the last few years. And now we're actually in a much larger facility. It's over 11,000 square feet in a different part of Charlotte,
Nice.
not too far from the city. Yeah, it's great. I'm actually in one of the offices right now, but we've got, staff offices, large indoor training spaces, areas where the dogs stay. We've got a couple acres here for, outside training and play
Cool.
areas. So we have about 20 on staff now. So just to kind of give you an idea of our current size. In terms of like what we do revenue wise, or just like the size of our company, we're well into the 7 figures. And I would say we probably have our hands on about 400 dogs a year. Between our puppies, our pet dog clients, our service program guide, and then we have dogs that we procure from our breeding partners, and we bring them in and train them, and they go into foster care for our service dog program too. So we have a lot of different departments here. And so, yeah, that's kind of where we're at now. And we'll be here for the next few years. I actually bought some land a couple years ago just on the other side of Charlotte, and we are in place to build a campus/facility out there in 2027, 2028. So we're hoping all operations will go over to that side, as well as the nonprofit, once that facility construction is complete. So
Outstanding. Yeah, I really loved your other podcast that we did, because we dove into the guide dog world and your expertise there. And it was a bit emotional. You're very strong to do what you do. And yeah, everybody that's listening, I will put the link also in the bottom of the description, so that you can go back and listen to that one, because it's very, very impactful. One of the things you just said that stood out to me is that you hired a bookkeeper. And I think as an entrepreneur, we are control freaks, and we sometimes want to like learn how to do everything ourselves, and we're just spreading ourselves too thin. I think it's really smart when you say, I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I'm going to have a bookkeeper or an ad guy or a website guy. I'm not going to try and do everything myself. So maybe if you could speak a little bit on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, hindsight's always 2020, right? And if I could go back and do it again, I would have hired more people faster to allocate more of that side of the business off of me. I generally enjoy it, but it doesn't allow me to do the things that I'm the best at, right? So and I've never wanted to touch taxes and all that stuff. So I knew from the beginning, like, I don't want to mess that up. That can be very significant on a business or individual if you don't file your taxes properly. So to me, just finding a good local CPA that is familiar with small business. We are, an LLC, but even something like filing as an S Corp, right, makes a huge difference in terms of how you file and your tax benefits. Or your tax liabilities and savings. So I would say definitely, yeah, hiring somebody right from the beginning. Make sure you set it up correctly. Make sure you're registered with the state, like you're just compliant and everything, because like there's nothing worse than getting hit with tax penalties because you didn't do something correctly, right? That could have been avoided. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I used to do a lot of the back end administrative work as I was training dogs. I even did like our socials in the beginning. And so like my second hire from there was a social media coordinator, which was huge because all of the photo and video capturing was better quality. She was able to edit it a lot faster, get it posted. I didn't have to do anything. So no more 5 a.m. or 11 p.m., when I had the time to edit videos and get them prepped. I didn't have to do that anymore. And just, that wasn't my cup of tea. Like, I know how to take an iPhone photo, but she was really good about, the angles and the quality of the photos, and just making sure that our socials from a brand perspective matched our website, matched who we are and what we do. And crappy photos and crappy videos don't speak well, right, on your company. So I think if you can, as soon as you can even hire, sometimes you can get volunteers or even like kids out of college that just need some experience. Maybe they need an internship. You don't have to pay anything or very little to get somebody that can come in on a part-time basis to do that. That's a lot more financially feasible than trying to hire an actual photographer or videographer, because their per hourly rate is very high, right? And if you're only needing like sporadic content, I know some people have had success too. Like we have so much content here that we actually have a need for a full-time social marketing person. But if you're a smaller company, you may not. And you could also consider hiring a videographer or photographer that can batch things. So you have them come out and take a bunch of content for like the month, and then you can schedule that content out. So just depending on like what you share on socials, like finding somebody that can help. Even if you collected, there's a lot of online things that, you can source out work for, that's affordable essentially. So that was my second sort of person after, obviously my CPA bookkeeper that kind of took some things off me. And then from there, like I've had some virtual assistants over the years that have helped with some just admin things. And more recently, I've hired my first sort of executive assistant, and that has been game changing. And I wish I would have done this years ago. But like you said, some of the stuff that she's doing, it's things that are very close to, it's very important. And so it is hard to give up that control. But I would tell anybody who's on the growth spectrum to go ahead and start early with your SOPs, right? Your standard operating procedures. Make sure that anything that you do, it's written down or you're videoing it, or something, so that when you hire somebody that comes in, they know what the heck they're doing, and it's going to save you a lot of time on onboarding. And also hire somebody who has experience in that. A higher end executive assistant is, you pay a little bit more for that versus your average admin person, because they're going to be able to help with those SOPs and find better ways for you to do things. And that's exactly what my assistant has been doing. It's like, oh, this is great, but what if we try this? Or like somebody that really is into the systems part of running a business. Because even though I enjoy that, I don't have the time, and most business owners don't have the time, right? And so hiring somebody who can do sort of the office work, the back end work, help you keep things running smoothly, communicate with your team. She really is almost like a chief of staff in a way too, right? She connects with all of my departments and the directors in each department and make sure everybody's on task. They have their schedule for the week. We meet weekly for leadership meetings to make sure everybody's in place. Everybody understands what's going on and what we need to work on. So I think definitely having some kind of an assistant like that would probably be, something I would highly recommend that people do, even if it's just answering the phone, right? And getting calls scheduled for you or your sales team, right? I think just taking as much of that stuff off of your plate, so that you can do more, whether it's doing what you love, whether it's going and training dogs. Like for me, I love to train guide dogs. And so I make sure that it fits into my schedule because that's something I'm very passionate about. So sometimes what I hear from trainers is when they start their own business, they lose the passion because they're so overwhelmed by the business side of it that dog training isn't fun anymore, right? Because they're burned out. So I think, to me, hiring those people so that you can go back to what you love, which is potentially training dogs. For me, it's the guide work, or even having, God forbid, have a vacation or some free time. I would say that would be, as soon as you can afford it or you feel like you can fit it into the budget, to definitely find some ways to allocate a lot of that back end stuff off you and make sure that you record or are keeping track of everything that you do as an owner so that it can easily get transferred to somebody else.
Yeah, so that was a lot of very good information. And I think that anybody listening is going to be like excited because you're like just breathing life into the journey that you've been on by helping bring these other folks in to help you build your family. You mentioned the leadership meetings. Now, one thing I wanted to ask about is something we talked about before we started recording, and it's call recording and inspecting, using those calls for training purposes and just inspecting for quality control. So maybe we could kind of break some things down, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you do there. And what the process is, or is it you, or is it someone else on your team that's kind of monitoring that particular element?
Yeah, so it's mostly me and my assistant at this point. And I do still do some sales calls, and that's probably the next thing I generally like it. I like to know who's coming into my building as well, and whether they're the right client for us. So there is a little bit of that I generally enjoy it. But yes, I will probably, like, a lot of our puppy calls or things that I don't need to be on would be allocated to another staff member, but it does, or a sale, person that's dedicated to sales. If you end up building a sales team, depending on how many leads you've got coming in, how often your phone's ringing, whether you need that. But to me, yeah, just quality control and also coaching. Like, it's not just to be like, oh, that was wrong. It's like, yeah, I love this, but I would have maybe said it this way, or here's, like, they were pushing back on cost. Here's a way around that, right? Or just kind of giving them some guidance. I am a big proponent of connecting with people in sales. I don't think dog training is a place where you can get away with a lot of really pushy sales. It's like kids with their parents, right? Like, it's a service-based industry, and I think we close so many calls and so many leads because we genuinely want to know what this person is going through. Like, our calls are at least 30 minutes, right? Like, and it's not like, how old's your dog? What are they doing? Okay, good. Here's the program I recommend. Oh, it's this much. Like, it's much more, tell me about your dog. Like, what's going on? Like, why are you frustrated? And really connecting with people. And, excuse my French, like, you got to give a shit. Like, people know whether or not you actually care about what they're saying, or whether you're just kind of like, just saying the same thing to the same person. And I always offer advice too. Like, that's one thing I tell my team, like, when you're talking to people about their dog, like, give them a freebie. Like, oh, really? Your puppy's peeing everywhere? Are you monitoring their water? Like, just something that's like, I'm here to help. Like, I genuinely want to help you. Here are some things you can start right away. And here is the program I recommend. And here's why, right? So that you're already connecting with the person. So yeah, for me, when I listen to my team, their calls, it's making sure that they're connecting with people, right? And that we're not just sort of going through the motions. And I think that makes a big deal, especially when you're dealing with maybe colder leads that don't know you at all, versus like somebody that had already trained with you, or someone that's neighbor trained with you. They're already kind of ready to go. They've done their research and they've heard about it. And so, but for the colder leads, the people who have absolutely no idea who you are, I think taking the time to make sure that they, felt heard, because their first experience with the company is that call, right? That's really important. And if we blow them off and we, are rude or anything, that's leaving a bad taste in the mouth, and they're not gonna, that's potentially bad PR out in our community, right? Like, that we were rude or dismissive to them. So yeah, that's a big one. Just mainly just coaching for sure. As well as just tracking, like, are we communicating things the same way? Are we all on the same page regarding how we answer specific questions? So that's kind of how we use most of the call monitoring or call recording.
I like that. And it's very, I just, you've got a lot of great insight to share, but I think that's very actionable. So maybe in the beginning, you may listen to the calls more frequently, and then maybe spot check. Maybe you could speak on that. And then also, you did mention that, you don't necessarily always go in with critiques, like, I'm upset with the way you handled this call, but maybe talk a little bit too about, like, hey, I listened to this call and I want to celebrate this win.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And it's the same way with my trainers. Like, when a trainer gets onboarded, and we'll go into that a little bit later, but it's a very in-depth, and we're very involved, and then we sort of let them have a little more independence, and then we go in and we spot check, like you said. So I'll randomly go out and watch a lesson. They don't know when and where. I'll show up, and I like interacting with the clients, and it's a good kind of quality control check, and make sure my trainers are, all feeling supported if they want me to be at a session because I think the dog is going to be really tricky, or the client on their virtual is kind of like, they can already tell they're going to be not very coachable, just that they get some support from either myself or my director of training. And even, like, we have sit downs, and we put together, like, commonly, like, what are our FAQs when we sit down with a client? Like, what are the questions that they're asking? Like, how do I keep my dog off the bed? Or how do I stop my dog from barking at the doorbell? Like, all of our sort of frequently asked questions that clients come up when we sit down as a team and we go over that, because I want to make sure that everybody on my team is giving the same advice. right? That's what I feel is missing in a lot of like some of your bigger franchises, is that you might get hired in and you have 2 weeks of training, and then you're contracted. You just go out on your own, and maybe you're training out of your house. There's no oversight. And depending on who you get in that company, you might have a very different experience. And to me, that's not what we do here. Like we all come from different backgrounds, but I believe that I should be able to pick up any of my trainers' dogs and work them, and the dogs should understand my cues. We should be generally on the same page, right, with how we're training and how we're communicating with the dogs. And it's the same with our clients, and it's the same with the sales calls, right? So just being super consistent and keeping that consistency as you grow, and keeping that quality control, I think, is a big one as you grow. That can be really hard to keep things in check when you are starting to manage people, and just inevitably as owners, we can't be everywhere at the same time, right? I wish we could. We just clone ourselves a bunch of times. That's what we all wish, but we have to put systems in place, and we have to train our staff well, and that's on us, right? We have to do that well enough that they can, and they're willing to and able to go out and work independently and still represent your brand the way that you want it to be.
Amazing, amazing. So can you tell me a little bit about your hiring process? Has it changed from when you first started, and if you made modifications, like what can you share on that to
Very
help
much
maybe other
so.
trainers?
Yep. I would say my biggest mistake was probably waiting to hire too late. So waiting until someone gave 2 weeks notice, or waiting until things started to not be so good and I was concerned about them. And then sure enough, I had to fire them or something. And luckily we haven't had a lot of turnover, because I think our company culture is good, but that's another topic. But even with that, like my recommendation would be to look farther ahead, like look a quarter or two ahead in terms of what your hiring needs are. So anticipating whether it's more services or the time of the year when you're busier, or seeing the projection of growth, and basically you don't want to be desperate when you hire, because you will end up hiring somebody that you don't really love. Like they're okay, but wait for the better person, right? And if you hire 3 months in advance, I get to see a lot more people, and I get to interview and work with a lot more trainers, and then I have more to choose from, versus waiting until I really kind of need it yesterday, and I'm going to grab whoever gets through the interview process the best. And even though they might be okay, but they might not, right? So I think for me, just being a little bit more proactive with hiring in all departments. And I sit down with my team and we look at that in our leadership meetings, and like, how are we doing with staffing? Like what anticipation do we need to look at for the next quarter? Like, do we need to consider another trainer? Like, where are we with the dog care staff, making sure that we've got everything covered. So yeah, being proactive there, and taking the time to interview people, and ask more than just about their dog training skills, or about the skills related to their job. Like one thing that I've heard a lot from people that I have interviewed or hired is like how interesting it was that I actually asked them about their personal life and their goals and who they are, and like, what are your hobbies? Like, because to me, I look at hiring as like, okay, does this person fit into our culture? Like, obviously, yes, they need to be able to train a dog and teach. And in fact, I think people skills are much more valuable than dog training skills. I can improve you as a dog trainer for the most part, but if you're not good with people and you cannot connect with our clients, we can't have you here, right? Because that's the most important part. That dog has to be successful with the client. And so their training and their success is what matters most, right? So for me, it's like, yeah, making sure that like I'm looking at the quality of the person. Do their goals align with where we're going as a company? Is this a long-term potentially place for them? Because I don't hire with a thought of like, oh, this person will just be here for 6 months. That's good enough. Like I want to hire people that are going to stay with us and are going to grow with us, ideally. There are a lot of books out there about how expensive it is to have turnover in your company, right? And the lost resources and time with having to hire and fire and rehire. And so really that to me is an art, and hiring is probably one of the most important things you're going to do within your business to make sure that you build the right team. Because if you have the wrong team, or all it takes is one person that's toxic and comes in and just messes everything up, you know? So to me, we really take our time with the interview process. They don't just interview with me, they interview with the director of the, you know, whatever department they're going to be working under. We check, you know, we obviously do the standard kind of background checks, and we check references. People aren't going to give us a reference that's not going to speak well on them. So to me, it's like, you know, we check them, but generally speaking, we like to get them in for a working interview. And we have them here all day, and they get hands-on dogs, and we take field trips out with training. We want to, are they asking questions? Are they inquisitive? Like, what is their natural instinct around a dog, right? Are they coachable? Can I say, hey, here we do this, and are they going to give me pushback, or are they going to be open? Because there's no one way to train a dog, but we have to be consistent here with our brand and how we train. So if they're not coachable and they only know their way and it's their way or the highway, they're not going to work here, right? So I look at like coachability, people skills. Are they personable? Are they fun to be around? How do they introduce themselves to others? Do they offer eye contact? Are they confident? How's their handshake? Like all of that stuff is more about who they are as a person, not so much like how many awards have they won in dog training, right? Or what titles they have. Because at the end of the day, with the type of dog training that we do, we're in more of the pet industry, and even the service dog kind of overlaps with that, right? So they have to really be good with people. And unfortunately, in my experience, a lot of very good animal trainers in general, not just dog trainers, but I see it in the horse industry too. They are in it because they don't like people. They like the dogs. They like the horses. And they're really good at it, but they are awful with the clients, or they're rude, or they're dismissive, or they just don't enjoy it. So that, to me, I always ask, especially our trainers, like, you know, why did you get into dog training? And if I hear something that's like, I like dogs more than people, and like I say, how do you feel about client training? You know, it's fine. I can do it. Like I'm probably not going to hire that person, because I think we've grown so fast with very little marketing, like paid ads or anything like that, because our clients leave here and they feel so good, not just about their dog, but how they were treated and the entire experience from the first consultation till the very last go home session. And that I would much rather have warmer leads come in, because all of our clients that are leaving are telling 5 or 10 of their friends about us. And now we have more people coming in. That, to me, if you can build that in your business, you won't have to spend 20 grand a month on marketing, because they'll come on their own because they heard about you, or you show up in all the forums, right, in the community, because everybody's, they're so great. Like, we've had people recommend us that actually haven't even worked with us. They're like, my vet and this person and that, but like everybody's been talking about this company, so definitely check them out. You know, like, so that's to me, you know, what I look for when I hire is this person going to enhance what we're building?
I like that.
Do they follow our core values? Yeah. Our core values are integrity, teamwork, and excellence. Right. And so to me, they have to fit in there, and they have to play a part in that, in promoting our brand. Otherwise, they're going to drag us down. Right. And that's not what we need. So, yeah.
Yes. I like the training day where you bring them in and they're actually around you guys. They're in your facility, it sounds like, and they're around the dogs. And sometimes I like hiring like a green trainer that doesn't know how to train dogs. They're like a blank slate.
That's easier because they're more okay.
You're not trying to change their methodology.
Anything, so.
Yeah, but like there's
muscle memory.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, sometimes it's like muscle memory where they've just practiced it for so long that they're even trying, it's just really hard for them to undo, right? So I do agree with that. Like, we've had some people come in that maybe they've worked another place, or they've done like a, Ivan's program, or they went to like a school or something. So they have a base, but they actually don't have, 10 years of training one way. I would agree with you. It is harder to change. It's just like a dog, right? Like, it's harder to change that muscle memory when you've practiced it one way for so long.
Yeah. Now, what if you have like a new hire kind of coming in, you're feeling things out, what would be something you're looking for, or maybe a red flag, just to kind of give you an example? Like, if I have someone and I have them meet my dog and they grab my dog and they show me how much they love dogs and they get in her face, I'm like, this is not good. But they
Yeah.
probably think I look really good right now because I'm hugging her dog and making, but we as dog trainers are like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. So maybe you could share
Yeah.
some red flags or warnings that you might be looking for.
Yeah, for me, I think when I fortunately haven't had that happen, where someone has come in and really mishandled a dog. I got kind of lucky there, I guess, but I can see where that's coming from, where they want to appear overly friendly or, but the dogs can tell, right? So usually what I do is just, well, I like to see if they are a visual learner, like how easy is it for them to watch me work a dog and learn my cues just real quick, 5 minutes. Like, okay, here's in a nutshell, here's the cue, here are the verbal cues, here's how we use our spatial pressure, right? This is a dog that understands some leash pressure, so here are our general cues there for negative reinforcement and how to work through that. Here are our markers, right? And then I'll do, I usually start with a puppy. I usually start with something super simple, because you have to know how to train something, right, before you finish it and proof it. So to me, I like to see, even if they don't love puppies, like, are they able to work with them? Are they able to work with a dog that, doesn't know anything really hardly at all, or maybe still in the very early stages? So I'll let them like watch me work one, and then I'll be like, I'll just pull another one out and I'll say, here, just have fun. Go have fun. Here, like, show me what you'd normally do. You now you know our markers, kind of generally what these dogs know. And I can usually tell like who can watch and observe and implement that. Even if they kind of came from a different style, like I want to see, are they coachable and can they watch and learn, or is there a big gap there? Are we going to struggle there? Because, basically they're going to have to shadow for the first month and watch and observe, and then they start putting their hands on dogs from there. I do not assign client dogs to our new trainers the first month that they're here. They can put hands on all the other dogs we have here, like for our service programs, or maybe some boarding dogs that are just coming back for a little tune-up training while they're here. But these people are paying really good money to have their dog trained, so I'm not going to put them with somebody who isn't quite there, right? So for the first month, they shadow. So I want to see, like, can you watch and listen and take that and actually apply it to the dog? So we'll do like a couple puppies, and then we'll bring out some older dogs, depending on whether they have e-collar training experience or not. We'll talk, if they do, we'll ask them how they e-collar condition. You would be surprised at some of the responses or just the blank faces that I've seen from trainers who came from other programs, right? That they've used an e-collar, but they really can't, they don't understand conditioning. They have never been taught that, right? And if I say escape avoidance conditioning, they're like, what? So I want to make sure they understand like how we condition, right? How we use it, what the end goal is. And depending on their experience and how they use it, I might let them work a dog off leash a little bit with the e-collar. And then we usually take a field trip. So we'll load some dogs up in the van, just generally watching them, how they handle getting dogs out of a crate, how they handle walking them if they start to pull. Do they address it? Do they let the dog just drag them out ahead of them? On like how confident do they feel just picking up a random dog and loading it up in a vehicle? And then we go into town somewhere, typically just to work some dogs in a public place, and we show them how we settle dogs. And sometimes we'll even take some service dogs out and talk a little bit about like what we're looking for in terms of public access, dealing with reactivity, just kind of talking dogs a little bit, while we're out, and just getting a general feel for, oh, well, how do you coach a client? Like, what would you tell a client if their dog was just kept jumping on them? Like, what advice would you give? Just kind of generally learning what their background is and who taught them and what they know, and just to some of it align. There's a lot of back and forth in the dog training industry about philosophies. And so obviously we're very transparent about the tools we use. We're balanced, like all of that. So we don't deal with people coming in that are like, oh, well, I'm a peer positive trainer. They wouldn't be applying to our company if they actually did their research. Because that wouldn't align with their philosophy. So I don't deal with that a ton. I have had trainers, I would stay away from people who seem to be a bit robotic, or they just don't generally seem like, it's like they're doing everything, but they don't generally connect with the dogs. Because if they can't do that, they're probably not going to connect with the clients either. And we generally want to have fun when we work here. Like if you come in and watch some random training, it's not like very stiff sit, like stoic, like boring training. Like there's toys, we're engaging with the dogs, like there's energy, there's movement. Like we generally want the dogs to enjoy, right, their work. And even with our behavioral cases that don't want food, they don't want toys, they don't want you to touch them, like we're still using movement. We're trying to help them come out of their shell, right? We're not just being disciplinary and going through the rounds of obedience. So to me, I look for people who generally understand how to connect with a dog, and aren't robotic in their interactions with the dog. That would be a red flag for me. And like we talked about before, any pushback or lack of coachability, or if they disagree, like, tell me why you disagree. Are they able to articulate that? Because that tells me how they're going to teach and how they're going to coach with the client. Are they able to walk through something? Do they get frustrated? That's a big no for us. I think I talked about that in our last podcast. We don't ever correct out of frustration here. Like, you won't have a job here. If you can correct a dog firmly without it being an emotional thing, like we're never gonna wheel dogs around or flip them or yell or stand over them or try to do anything like that. It's just not good training. You don't need to do it. There are modern tools now, and there are modern ways of training where you can still have a firm correction without it being in the dog's face, you know? So I would never hire somebody that I felt was heavy-handed, because a lot of our dogs here, like in the pet world and even the service world, like they're soft. You know, we're not dealing with like, you know, very, very intense dogs that need a lot of firm handling. So, and clients don't want that either. Like nobody wants to see their dog get yanked and jerked around on a prong collar. Like it's just not good training, and our clients don't want that. And so that would probably be a red flag too, as somebody that either they came from a background that was just too heavy-handed and they weren't coachable enough to be able to learn to have a little more finesse in the way that they handle the dogs.
Yes, that makes good sense. And then they're with you for that first month you mentioned, and they're really visually kind of picking things up and talking with you guys. So how long is that training process? Is it a few months?
Yeah. So, So after they get through their working interviews and they're officially hired and onboarded, we have a 90-day kind of, like, we call it a probationary period. It's essentially making sure this is a good fit for us and it's a good fit for them. And it's giving them time to learn and develop themselves as a trainer before we just turn them loose. So they are on a probationary pay for 3 months as a contractor. And the first month is just shadowing. So they'll watch our director of training. We usually bring them in at the beginning of a training cycle so they can watch the dogs as they arrive from the owners on drop-off day. We do mostly board and train, right? So dogs are going to arrive. They get to see how we get them settled in, how we get them relaxed in the crate, how we introduce them into play group, how we do physical health, temperament assessments on them. Our back-end systems, our CRM, how we upload photos, like all of that stuff, just shadowing, just learning what the process is from the day the dog gets dropped off to the day they go home. In between the training times, if there's time allowed, we typically will have them, like I said, work some other dogs that we might have here, whether they're service dogs in training that aren't quite assigned yet to anybody, or some of our boarding dogs that maybe are back for some tune-up training just while they're here boarding, just to keep their hands on some dogs. And again, have us keep chipping away at their markers and their cues and making sure that they're still practicing during that sort of initial shadow month. And then after the initial shadow month, which our cycles are about 4 to 5 weeks, and of course, they're going to watch all the client sessions, right? We're going to let them read the emails. They're going to sit on the virtuals that we have with clients before their in-person lessons. So they're going to listen, take notes. And then for their second month, we usually assign a couple dogs at that point. They either are service dogs that are in training that need maybe some e-collar training. They're of age where we can start to do that. Or we might give them a client or two, their dog, if we feel the person is ready. Most of our trainers come in with some experience. So usually by the first month, they're okay to have a couple dogs. And then the third month is where they get a full string if they're ready. So it would be 4 dogs that would be assigned. These are client dogs. And we would be expecting them, you know, with support, right, to kind of be showing more independence, you know, all the way through the cycle. We still have a senior instructor with that person at all times, like overseeing the training or putting their hands on the dogs throughout the cycle, make sure they're progressing properly. And then with our client training, somebody is there to shadow the sessions just to make sure that person, that new trainer, is feeling supported, and that we're making sure that, again, our quality is staying high. And most trainers within 3 months, like, they're fairly independent. There have been times where maybe we still send somebody out for some of the client sessions, even past that point, depending on what the issue is or what they need work on. But generally speaking, we're looking for people after 90 days to kind of understand our system, understand how we operate, understand how we teach, to be able to start to go out on their own a little bit more independently in their 4th cycle. So,
yeah. And that's a long time. I think a lot of us were, oh my gosh, I've got somebody. Now I'm going to go have a nap. And we're ready to cut,
no.
the new
No,
person
you can do it
loose
that
too
way.
soon.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, exactly.
your process sounds fantastic. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your team meetings and retreats, celebrating wins.
Sure. Yeah. So, I read this great book. I think it's Cameron Herold's book, like, Meetings Suck. And it's really about, that's literally the title of the book. But I'm sure we've all been in meetings where we're like, this is a big waste of time. And if meetings are not done well, it is a big waste of time. And when you look at what you're paying people per hour to sit in on a meeting, it better be productive, right? If you add all that up, that's how much money you're wasting if it's not a productive meeting. So we have structures to our meetings. Every department meets with their team, either weekly or biweekly, depending on the department. But agenda is sent out by the director at least 24 hours ahead of time, like what we're talking about. Like, there's nothing worse than going into a meeting and like nobody knows what we're supposed to be, going over. So having an agenda that lays out how long the meeting is, what are the topics that are going to be discussed, it gives people an opportunity to read it, understand what they're walking into, and present some questions and have some, have something, notes in place, so that we're not wasting time, right, trying to play catch up. Everybody knows what we're going to be going over. So we send out meeting agendas ahead of time. And then we have typically set times every week or every other week so that it doesn't change, which helps with people's schedules. They know, all right, every Monday at 3 is our such and such meeting, right? They're usually about an hour long. In our leadership meeting, every representative is there from each department. So they each partake in filling out the agenda ahead of time. It's a live document, so they can go in and kind of put in what they like to go over. I put in things that I want to go over to the team, my executive assistant, same thing. So we each kind of start and talk about things within our own department, and then we're brainstorming. So we're sort of information sharing first and going, okay, here are the things that we're dealing with here in the department. Here are things that are working well. Here are things that are creating some bottlenecks and are problems. And then we each listen, and then we offer guidance and support. And we just have a discussion around, okay, how do we fix the things that are not working well, right? What does that look like? And then from there, you have to kind of have some action items. I think sometimes people go into meetings and it's like a venting session. That's not productive, right? So you can be frustrated about something, but at the end of the day, we have to have something, we have to leave that meeting with something and a plan in place. Okay, great. Here's the bottleneck. Here's how we're going to address it. Okay, you're assigned to this. Like, who wants to tackle this, right? And we put assignments on who's going to be responsible for trying to tackle this issue, or who's going to, address it. And then we reconvene and say, all right, well, let's reconvene next week, or let's reconvene in 2 weeks. Let's come back to this, give them some time to address it. And then we go from there. So it's definitely a combination of information sharing and just discussion on, where people are in the departments and what's going well and what's not, and action items on how we improve the things that aren't going well. And that could be something as little as a facility maintenance issue, or, a staffing issue, or a protocol issue. Maybe we need to tweak the SOP for something. We have, how are we going to onboard somebody, so the topics can range, so I think that's generally my recommendation would be to have good structure to your meetings, have a plan. Don't just wing them, and go in with a plan on what's going to be discussed, and then making sure that people don't just leave and go, okay, whatever, yeah, that's great. And then nothing happens between that meeting and the next one, so that there are specific plans in
Yeah.
place to make sure that people are following up and doing what they need to do.
Yeah, I like that tip on the book, Meetings Suck. It's an easy one to remember.
Yeah.
um,
Cameron Herold, honestly, any of his stuff is really good. Like, there's a lot of, I would say that's a big recommendation too, is for owners to start reading. I read a lot, and I don't love a lot of fiction, but I do like things that help me in my day to day and help me with the business. So, another one, a good one, is Buy Back Your Time. That was very impactful for me. So just reading about what it's like to run a business, and we've all hit the same bottlenecks. We've all been up and down the same mountains, right? And so that'll help you kind of prepare for the common issues that arise when you start to grow as a company.
yeah, and I think us as dog trainers, like when we start out, at least we just want to learn as much about dogs and dog behavior, but we don't want to learn
Mhm.
about our business because, we're so interested in dogs, but those books sound like, a great asset. So it's good to put a lot of
Yeah.
energy into learning about your business and sales and meetings and teams and scaling.
Mhm. Yeah, and we really encourage that in all of our staff. It's not just for, the directors or the leaders. Like, we have a kind of an open spreadsheet and Google Sheets that, like, continuing education ideas. All of my
Mm.
staff get a continuing education stipend each year, and they are expected to go out and learn and better themselves, whether it's training or dog care or canine nutrition or whatever interests they have that relate to their work. So we have a live document of, like, books that maybe somebody read or a podcast or something. We're like, oh, this is really cool. We put it in the CE ideas, or just like generally where people can go, our staff can go and see, okay, like, what are people reading, and like where are some places that I can go to educate myself. So that's also something I'd recommend. Encourage their staff to always be learning, right? And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
just be dog training. It could be learning to be a better manager. You have to train people. You can't just promote someone into a manager position because of seniority. Oh, well, you've been here the longest, so I guess you'll go here. Because I've seen people that I've had in my company that were the most senior trainers that were really not good managers. And to me, like, you have to make sure that, again, going back to hiring, that you're strategic even in your promotion of people within your company, and making sure that when you put somebody in a position of leadership, that if they haven't had experience in it before or a proven track record, they better get some training for it, because it is a whole nother ballgame to manage people with that you work with in a team environment than it is to train a dog or teach a client, right? Totally different.
Yeah, definitely. Um, One easy thing, just as a tip, I'm thinking of as you're saying to continue your education is Toastmasters. Have you been to a Toastmasters meeting?
Mhm.
Yeah, so those
I have
can
not, but
be,
I've heard of them. I've definitely heard of them.
yeah. And I find that like in Toastmasters, there's other people that were sent there from, their business that they work for because they're trying to be better speakers, use less filler words,
Mhm.
just lots of good reasons, but that might be a very inexpensive thing that monthly the team
Yeah.
could participate in. You could do it Zoom or you could do it in person. I think if you do it via Zoom, it's kind of cheating. You kind of got to get out there in person, but that might be something to think
Yeah,
about. I wanted to ask a
sure.
question that kind of like might be a tougher time when you've got maybe a staff member that's not really pulling their weight. What are some of the things you're looking for that let you know that, and do you make a change? What do you do at that point when someone's maybe not working out?
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, usually if you're in the business enough still where you're around, you can usually pick up on it, whether it's just they're not interacting with their coworkers like they normally would, or they, are spending more time by themselves, or often comes up in meetings too, like a meet with staff, or they meet with their managers and there's complaints against the person for lack of effort in their job, or whatever. performance issues, bringing up inappropriate topics at work, whatever it is, it's usually coming out in a meeting. So we kind of know, all right, we've got to keep an eye on this. And typically what we do if we start to see something like that is we have their direct supervisor or manager sit down and kind of just have a one-on-one with them. Hey, how's things going? Talk to me a little bit. Like, how are you feeling? Do you feel like your work is going well? Do you feel like you're performing your best? Is there anything going on at home? Like, we've just received some input, right, from some of your colleagues that there's some issues here with performance or here. And we like to give specific items. I try to make sure that I tell my staff, hey, if or managers, hey, if there's incidents happening, you need to document them. It needs to be a date, who reported it, what the issue was, because if it progresses past a verbal warning or a sit down with the staff member, we need to be having documentation in order for a written warning and then potentially even for termination. So, just from a legal perspective, you really need to be careful, right? So to make sure you have all the information that you need to properly, terminate someone if need be. And even if it's a termination where it's immediate, like somebody does something against company policy, showing up to work high or drunk or whatever, God forbid, or mishandling a dog or just anything that would be immediate termination, you need to have it documented. You need to write it up. You need to have people, the manager sign it. You need to have it, because if that person were to say, oh, I was fired because of some kind of discriminatory reason, then we have documentation, right? That's time stamped of like, no, this is actually what occurred, right? I've never had that happen, knock on wood, but you hear about it, right? So it's kind of, you just have to protect yourself and making sure that you're doing the right things for your company and you're doing the right things for the employee. You need to follow protocols and procedures and give them a chance to understand what's going on, right? Like, you can't just go, to my opinion, you can't just act like nothing's happening and then randomly fire somebody and they're kind of like caught off guard, right? So for me, it's like you get a verbal warning, then you get a written warning. And if it's something where I generally feel like the person is trying, they're just forgetful, or maybe they're struggling with an aspect of their job, we support them. How can we help you so that this doesn't occur again? What can we do to support you? Those are the types of things we say in the meetings, not get your shit together, I don't want to see this again, and leave. Like, that's not, sometimes we have to be firm, but oftentimes it's like, if we think they're trying and they just need some support, then it's our job as managers and leaders to help them develop, right? Especially if it's just maybe somebody got promoted into a lead position and they're just struggling with that and they want to do better and they're trying, but they just need a little more coaching.
Yeah.
That we're going to put more effort into those people to make sure that we can try our best to help them be better at their job. And then if they can be, great. And if they can't be, then sometimes you just have to cut people loose, right? If it's just not the right fit, or, even with all that support, they're still not able to do their job, then it's not a personal thing. It's just, I'm sorry, it's just not working, But before all that, I like to make sure that I feel like at the end of the day, if I have to, fire someone, I don't want to have to go to bed at night feeling like crap because I felt like I didn't do enough to help that person. Right. And I think that's why everybody's here that's here, and I'm in the role that I'm in the role because I genuinely care about people. And so even if it's a staff member, that's, one of our kennel staff, or, a contractor that hasn't been with us for a while, like, I don't want them leaving our company with a bad taste in their mouth, like, even if I have to let them go, it needs to be done in a professional way. And then we need to be fair to everybody. So that would be kind of how what I would recommend is definitely don't sweep it under the rug. Definitely don't just assume it's going to get better. Nobody likes to have those uncomfortable conversations. And I think people put it off because it makes them uncomfortable to think about sitting down with a colleague or a staff member to address something that can be confrontational potentially. But it is a skill set that you have to have if you're going to do this as a career and you're going to be, run a business. And I do encourage our staff to have healthy conversations with their colleagues. So if it's something minor and it's just like, hey, have you talked to them? Like, I do encourage our team to like come to each other and not just run to the manager every little time, but that they try to resolve it themselves professionally. And if that doesn't get better after that initial conversation, then they know they can come to us and we will support them in addressing the issue.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I got from that that's very actionable is if something isn't perfect, something goes wrong, and you don't sweep it under the rug. Document it and address it right away. Because I've been in situations where I'm so busy and something happens, and then that individual does something amazing a few days later, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
now I can't talk to them about this issue.
Well,
So
and you'll see that too. Like I've seen that happen where you give somebody a verbal warning and like for a couple days they're like kicking ass and then it fizzles again. That's really concerning to me because that's not going to stick, right? So if they're just doing stuff to impress you, that they're not truly trying to improve themselves, that would be a red flag to me. And I would be like, all right, well, this is now a pattern. And we probably should be prepared to do a written warning fairly soon if it continues, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because in our program it's verbal, written, and then from there. So
yeah, great advice. And then one more question. You mentioned the word culture, and you've mentioned that in our talks before. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about, your healthy company culture that you've created.
yeah, and it's a process. It's never done, like just like running a business, it's never done. You're always looking to improve or grow. It's a journey. It's not, we didn't always have the best culture. I think generally speaking, compared to a lot of companies, we have always been on the higher end. We have not had turnover. I generally treat all my staff very well. Our directors do, like we have a good team dynamic. I think you could ask anybody here if I generally care about them and their place in this company, and the answer would be yes, right? So to me, I think looking at your team as a team and not, oh, those are my employees that I boss around and I just show up, do your job, get your paycheck, don't bother me, like that is not good. People aren't going to stay. And so to me, like, yeah, whether it's continuing education, trying to pay them as much as you feel like is feasible for your budget within the company, and promoting people when you can, making sure you're not going to your teammates only when something's going wrong and saying, hey, don't do this, like give them props, just like dog training, right? Like give some positive reinforcement in there. Like don't always just wait until something's not working well for you to sit down and talk to that person. They need to hear that they're doing well more times than they're not, right? Like
yes.
So to me it's just, there's this term like manage by walking around, and I try to think about that. Like sometimes I'll just come in and I'll just do my rounds. Like I'll just walk around the facility. Hey guys, how's it going? Just peek my head in the offices if I'm not bothering them or they're training. Like, oh, how's this dog? Like, we're going in the back, talk to dog care. Like, hey guys, how's your day going? Anybody giving you any trouble? Like, just generally going around and checking in on people. How can I help you? Or like sometimes before I go, I'll check her out and be like, hey guys, I'm going to leave in a few minutes. Is there anything that you guys need help with? Like, just being a part, even as a boss, like being a part of the day-to-day. And we are a lead by example, like type of management system, meaning like we're going to get in there and get our hands dirty. We're not going to walk around with clipboards and boss you around. We're going to get in there and give direction and structure and help you. But nobody here is too good to clean up a potty accident, right? Nobody's too good here to scoop poop. Like you gotta be a part of your team, I think, for them to feel like you aren't just the scary person at the top, right? That everybody's afraid to talk to. And I still deal with that. Some people don't want to bother me because I'm busy, and I'm like, guys, my office is always open. And having an executive assistant helps because she's sort of the way in, right? She manages my schedule. And so if people can come to her and say, hey, can you schedule me with a meeting with Rebecca sometime this week, and she'll take care of it. And that helps them, I think, feel like they have someone to go to that isn't bothering me. But I think that that's always the nature of the beast when you're a boss. You're always going to be the boss. So you have to try to connect with your team and make sure they feel like they can come to you if there's something going on, right? And they can trust you. And that you're not just the person that comes around when they did something wrong. That's, to me, I think, important. Team meetings are great. I love team dinners or team activities, or we do some retreats, right? just to try to connect with people outside of work, like getting to know your coworkers and getting to know your staff on a deeper level, like what their personal goals are, what are their hobbies. Like you'd be surprised, like it's very eye-opening to learn about your staff and know what they like and what their goals are, because the reality is like we have to make sure that we're helping facilitate those goals. They can't stay here and have a career in your company if they don't see a future for themselves there, or the work that they're doing won't lead them to where they want to go. So it's, to me, it's my job as a leader to understand my team, what makes them tick, what they like, and how do I help them achieve those long-term goals, right? Because otherwise, like, why would they stay if they don't feel I'm invested in them? And I ask a lot of them, right? We all work hard here to make this thing operate smoothly. Then it's my job to support them and make sure they feel valued. That's just my general opinion on leadership.
And I like the just communicating with them, like going up saying, hey, how's it going? What did you do for Halloween? What did your kids dress up as? And just showing that kind of interest, having those dinners, like a staff dinner, year-end dinner, maybe letting different staff members pick the restaurant and doing a secret Santa
holiday party.
Yeah,
it's the fun stuff.
outside of
There's
work.
a great book if anybody wants to read on kind of a cool case study on what I'm talking about specifically. There's a book called The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. And it's about a company that was having extremely high turnover. It was a really low end kind of janitorial kind of company. So kind of entry level jobs, right? And they talked about how they changed their company completely to have better retention, and people were crashing down the door to come work for them because of the company culture and what they built within that. And it was a lot of it was about understanding your staff and understanding how we can leverage the company to help them fulfill their goals so that they want to stay. Right. So that's a great book. It's not a long book. It's an easy read, but it's very, for me, very impactful about how you run a business and what the end goal is. Right. And to me, like my why is to make sure that I'm providing a wonderful environment for my team to work in and they can have a career here and pursue their passions. That's my why, right? So I have to set that up from the ground all the way up and make sure that like they feel valued here, and I'm doing everything that I can to help them be promoted within the company and stay long term, that this is their home. That's why I always, everybody I bring in, that's always my intention for them. And it's just about trying to find the right people that appreciate that and also kind of have that same mentality about their workplace.
Yeah, I like what you just said, that this is their home. That was very nice. Awesome. Yeah. Well, we just went over an hour. Well, we're almost to an hour, I guess. We chatted beforehand. But maybe you could share a little bit about where people can find you at Love in the Lead, like your website, socials.
Yeah, sure. So we're online, of course, like everybody these days. So loveinthelead.com is our website. We are on Facebook and Instagram as well at Love in the Lead CLT, like Charlotte. So definitely check us out. If people are interested in training or interested, I do some business consultations as well. We have shadow programs here for trainers. We have internships, things like that. But I do a lot of virtual consultations for trainers who more on the business side, like where they're at and where they're trying to go, and just offer some advice. So I'm always open and available to that as well.
And it sounds like you have something planned for maybe the future with that property that you have too. So
for trainers? Yeah, I think we would really love to have kind of almost like a school for training, and not just the focus on training, but the business side of it. I think that's missed a lot in dog training schools. It's just dog training. There needs to be more emphasis on client training, in my opinion, and also like the business side of things. Because even if you don't desire to run a business, I think what you'll learn from that will carry over in other aspects of your life, right? Whether it's financial planning or just general structure. I think there's a lot of benefits there, even if, owning a business isn't really necessarily a goal of yours. I think it's always good to learn some of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, when I first started, I was just like, dogs are awesome. But learning about business and coaching people is very important. So Well, thank you so
Yeah,
much,
and it's
Rebecca.
a different skill set for sure. You're
Yes.
welcome. I'm always happy to jump on. So just definitely let me know if you guys want to talk about different topics or hone in on something specific, or if the viewers want me to talk a little bit more in depth about something, just let me know. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, I think we could take a deeper dive on leadership. I have so many other questions, but we reached an hour. So we'll have to do like a part two on this
Sure.
because I definitely want to
Yeah,
pick
for
your brain
sure.
on more things. Awesome.
Yep,
Well,
absolutely.
just stay
Happy
on
to.
for a
Thank you, Lianne.
second after,
Mhm.
just hang in there for a second. But everybody, thank you so
Okay.
much for listening. Again, I'm Lianne Shinton from Automation Dogs. We were with Rebecca from Love in the Lead. Everybody have a great day.